Hi everyone. Today markets were a little bit choppy in here, but you can see we did hold this 55 EMA and then we ended up rallying kind of into the mid-session and then definitely after hours. So let's take a look at the charts and see if we can find some direction for tomorrow. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So finishing up with the major earnings for today, you have Apple rising 3% on a boost to services revenue. iPhones missed pretty substantially, down 11.1% in China, which is supposed to be their growing market, and that is not really growing at this point. But the services, good enough to see Apple up 3%. You like to see it there. Revenues rose by 4% in the quarter, beat basically on every metric here besides iPhones. Like we said, iPhones was a pretty substantial miss. Other product revenues also missed by a little bit, but the big one here was services revenue. Nice beat there. Gross margins continue to do really well, and despite this being a very mature company, it does seem to be growing at a pretty decent clip. You can see 14% from the same period last year. They also talk about Apple TV with 1 billion subscribers, which isn't just Apple TV, that is also iCloud as well as their other subscription services. So that continues to do well. Like I said, a beat on subscriptions, one of their highest margin businesses, was enough to keep the stock up despite the miss on iPhones and their other products. Moving over to Fear and Greed, to a 48, up from a 45, continues to hold up fairly well. It is kind of choppy price action here. Momentum still in fear, strength still extreme fear, but breadth continuing to go higher here. This is 200-day breadth, and it is looking very good. Back into neutral, back into the middle of the range. We'll see if that continues to hold up. Put call ratio, greed makes sense, still pretty depressed there. Volatility continuing to go down a little bit. Safe haven demand gaining strength over the last day. And then junk bonds still sitting in regular greed. Overall, market conditions continue to improve very slightly. Moving over to the earnings calendar, you can see the miss on revenues by Apple. Everything else pretty much was good. Caterpillar missed on revenues a little bit. Yes, also missing on revenues, but beating on earnings. Sherwin-Williams also missing on revenues. Not super worried about that. Altria beating on both. Intel, big beat on revenues. Interesting. I wonder what's driving that. Also beating on earnings. Definitely want to see what's going on with that stock post earnings. Based on that, you would assume it's up a little bit, but who knows? Southwest Airlines beating on both. Travel seems to be doing well still. And then for the Friday, a bunch of oil companies. AbbVie, fairly interesting. I'm really curious to see how these healthcare companies are going to do post RFK. Once he gets confirmed, are they going to have a major reaction? That could be interesting. And that'll wrap it up for the week. Moving over to the S&Ps here, you can see positive day about 0.5%, still pushing towards that gap fill, still pushing towards the level 607. After hours, it's up about 80 cents on the back of Apple. So continues to kind of grind a little bit higher here, holding the levels pretty low on the low for the day, down at 600.72. Very close to my level there, 599. Didn't quite touch it, did catch the bounce from there. So we're back into this kind of consolidation range here through the beginning of mid-December. We've only been above this very short amount of time, but we're back into this range here. Is this the double top range? Potentially. Right now, the structure still looks bullish. If it breaks out, obviously that's going to be good. But I do want to point out this structure here. You can see it does kind of look like a rising wedge, which is unfortunate. So you get slightly higher highs, but it is fading in that velocity to the upside. Over the next day or two, you're probably going to culminate here. Maybe you get a breakout, fake out, and if it rejects from there, that's going to be terrible. So for right now, it looks like we are holding this structure, which is slightly bullish short term, but once the structure breaks, it usually breaks to the downside. So gap fill, like I said, still looking for that. And like I said, the concern is we finish the structure, we get the gap fill, we break out, touch the level, and then reject. That could be majorly bearish, but if you don't get the confirmation, you never know. For right now, it does look slightly bullish, and I've seen it where you get the breakout, your retest continuation. Patterns are just patterns. They don't always culminate the way you think they might. And then moving over to the SPY charts on the Tasty charts, you can see this big wick rejection here at the level, and then huge volume coming in and pushing that up here. So you're still in bearish conditions, but it seems like we're probably going to push through that tomorrow. Get the gap fill. You can see bands starting to trend up a little bit here. Again, keep in mind that structure that we just talked about, but for now, this does look a little bullish. Want to see that ATR trailing stop get taken out at 606.50. Haven't closed above it. We got very close to touching it. In fact, I think we did touch it here on that 2 o'clock candle, but Obviously, we didn't close above it, and it seems like we're headed towards it in the after hours. And then moving over to the NASDAQ, similar thesis, up 0.4, held the level after the retest at 519.50, touched the level, bounced pretty strongly, finished positive on the day, and then after hours we're up about $2, headed towards that 526.50 level. Still have a lot more room here for the gap fill. Structure very similar, so you can kind of apply that yourself if you want to. You can see what I'm talking about here. Slightly higher lows and slightly higher highs. If it breaks out from here tomorrow, though, you could absolutely see an acceleration through here. Look for the gap fill, maybe a test of the 530 level. I would love to see that, honestly. Want to see this kind of slow grinding action breakout if it's going to do it. Otherwise, if we see the breakout, retest, rejection back into this range, and then we see a break through the low of this range, that is going to be catastrophic. Then based on that, I would probably be looking for a move back to these lower lows back in the 503 area. So definitely going to be interesting to see what happens here. Critical zone right now, we're right at the trends after hours. If it breaks out, it's going to be super critical to see markets hold those levels because the rejection, like I said, could be catastrophic in my opinion. And then looking at the Tasty chart for the Qs, really not a whole lot of anything. You can see kind of sideways choppy action headed towards that level there. Your trailing stop right now, 525.49. Right now we are at 524.99, 525 flat. So again, kind of looks like we're going to push through there. You can see the volume coming through at the end of the session, which ended up moving in the bullish direction. So overall, everything for me says buyers are still holding up the market, and it seems like they're going to go at least a little higher in the short term. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see both of these were slightly positive on the day. Russell up 1%, but you can see doji candle. You can see we're falling just a little bit after hours, about 30 cents. Overall good. Momentum stepping to bullish. RSI holding up there. You like to see all of that. Still have not seen it close back above 229 since back here. We had a brief hold above it, rejected from that 55 EMA, and we did touch it again, and then we rejected from it again, so that's not super great. Either way, want to see it close above 229.18, start to push towards that 232 area if it's going to do it. Right now, this looks like consolidation still. Could go either way, really. And then looking at the Dow, up just a slight bit there at $1.64. We're really in the same trading range that we've been in. Almost flat from the Tuesday, down a little bit Wednesday, back into the same zone here for the Thursday, and you can see same consolidation highs in here as well. So either way, everything looks relatively strong. Just need to see the breakout if we're going to get it. Otherwise, if we reject from here, same thesis as everything else. You have a consolidation, a bit of a top here. If it breaks, that's bad. If we can push through, then we should be in good shape. Moving over to the Mag 7, similar thesis here, sideways choppy action. It was down during the session, just a smidgen, about 50 cents. After hours, we're up about $1.50 or so. If we can get this continuation into here, we're in good shape. If it rejects from here and we start to see this roll to the downside, that's going to be a high, lower high setup, and that's going to be bad. And then at that point, I would expect the 55 EMA to break, and then we could see a more longer term, deeper cut here, potentially down to that 144 EMA, down in the 287 area, my level 290. So that would be obviously significantly lower. The risk, in my opinion, is still to the downside. That's not to say there's not a little bit of opportunity here, somewhere between 5 and 6% to that upper trend. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Speaking of Apple here, you can see it's up at 244 here after hours. You like to see it. It was right at the level, 237. We closed above it 3 days in a row. Held the level, got a nice little bounce now. At this point, you're looking for the trend, which is about another 2% higher even from the after hours price. Momentum bullish. RSI still bullish. Everything looks good there. And then looking at Microsoft, looking at this fallout from the earnings announcement, you can see it was down 6.18%, closed pretty much on the low. The low of the day was 413.16, touched my level 413.36, caught a little bit of a bounce from there. After hours, it's up a smidgen at 418, up from 415 or so. So it's getting a little bit of an after hours bounce. Still volume very bearish, RSI very bearish, momentum very bearish. Certainly wouldn't say that this is going to hold in here. Maybe it does, but I would expect more follow through to the downside. It was probably just extended in the short term. Still waiting for 413 to break though. We've tested it a couple times here recently. Still has not closed below it since back here, and that was for a very short period of time in November. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla was positive on the day, just barely after their earnings the previous day. So they did a lot of talking about full self-driving, Optimus robots, power generation. Car sales not doing so good, but the stock still holding very strong in here. 55 EMA continues to hold its support at 390.30. Still in the same trading range we've been in, 384.29 up to 414.50. Got close to that zone, did reject, finished nearly in the middle of the range. Momentum stepping to bullish, RSI still kind of neutral there for me. And then looking at NVIDIA, continuing to find support at the 200 and at the trend. We threw another wick to the downside, touched the level, bounced, finished slightly positive on the day, but still cannot close above that 124.69 level. We closed at 124.65. After hours, we're down about $1.30 in there. So still looks not so good coming off of the back of that DeepSeek announcement. Moving over to Amazon and Alphabet here. Amazon was down, touched the level 233, caught a little bit of a bounce from there. Still waiting on that earnings. We'll see momentum fading, RSI fading. If it closes below the level, not great. Obviously, if support holds, we're still in good shape. And then looking at Google, so we did get that continuation up. We got to this kind of high range, still has not touched that trend, the same trend we continue to touch, so maybe you have just a little bit more upside in it. Really strong day though. It was already up about 2.75%, got about another 1% potential to the trend. If it breaks out, obviously that's going to be very, very strong potentially, but for now, this has been a zone of resistance. We'll see if it goes. Then moving over here to Meta and Broadcom, both of these did pretty well on the day. Meta was up 1.5%. It was up more, obviously, on their earnings. You can see the high of day was at 710.79. We closed at 687. So pulled back a little bit. Momentum still very strong. Still super overbought there at 74.13. Waiting to see if we get into the trend area around here, 750. Seems like it's going to go, honestly, probably just a little bit extended in the short term. And then looking at Broadcom, got a little pop there off of that 55 EMA, 4.5% back above this trend line here. Momentum stepping to bullish. Honestly, this could go either way. You have a break of this structure here. If you retest it, reject, that's going to be bad. If you hold the structure in here at the trend, then that's a little bit good. So right now, kind of in no man's land, waiting to see what happens. Looking at staples and discretionary, staples caught a little bit more of a bid after holding support there at 78.88, up almost 1%, right to the level 79.90. The high of day was 79.90 to the penny, so we touched that level, rejected a little bit from there. If it breaks out, obviously good. If it rejects from there, maybe we see a pullback to here around the 77.80 area, retest some of these structures in here and then push higher, maybe get the gap fill potentially. And then looking at discretionaries here, you can see 1% up, still looking for this trend here around the 236 area. This looks a little bit risk on for me, honestly. I know Staples is doing well, but we held this trend structure in here. We got a little bit of a break above that. Looking for the trend touch. Maybe we break, retest this high here. That would be interesting. But for right now, both of these look a little bullish to me. Moving over to 20 and 50-day breadth. You can see 20-day breadth up about 10%. So we did catch a little bit of a bounce into this consolidation range. Once again, we were starting to see a little bit of a breakdown for 2 days, but then we caught a bounce back into the mid-range here of this consolidation high. So that's good. We're continuing to hold here. Want to see that continue to do that. And then looking at 50-day, caught a little bit of a bounce, got back above 52.80. Want to see it push through this zone here and get above 62.25 so we can see that continuation potentially. Momentum still fading. RSI still looks okay. Overall, nice bounce off of the 9. Both of these look a little bit more bullish here today than they did yesterday. We had a little bit of concern at 68.14. If that broke, that was going to be concerning, but caught a bounce. So far, so good. Moving over to the dollar broke out back above this consolidation of EMAs, back above the 108 level, closed above it, so that looks a little bullish. On the daily chart, maybe we retest the 21 and break down from there potentially. Momentum still stepping to bullish, RSI right there at the SMA. So if it's going to reject, needs to do it here. If it pushes through there, then we're probably headed a little bit higher back to the trends in here, maybe even back to 109.5. At this point, I feel like you have to accept that the dollar is going to remain strong probably during the duration of Trump's presidency at this point. He seems very defensive of the dollar, very defensive of the US economy, which makes sense. I feel like that is part of why he was elected, and the dollar seems to be reflecting that, at least for now. Not to say that it can't break down, but I think this is a little bit of a fundamental move here Obviously, it was very dramatic for a long period of time, and it did continue to rise as it seemed more and more likely that he was going to be elected. So for better or for worse, the dollar remains strong. Moving over to the VIX, we broke the trend here, gap down in doji, momentum bearish, RSI bearish. This seems like it's going to go at least a little bit lower, 14.7. We'll see if we touch that level again. If it breaks through there, back into the 12 to 13 area, that would be interesting. Everything here says this should go a little bit lower now with the move here today, especially with that last major earnings coming in. There's still a little bit more out there, but we got most of the heavy hitters, at least for now. Moving over to my accounts, I am back in the green for the year. Amazing. Finally made it back into the green at least a little bit. These numbers are a little bit funky. I definitely didn't make that much money today. I think that's also partly factoring in this move after hours, which was about $2, which I should benefit from that. My covered call here, max profit, is going to be $527.50. So $4.50 credit on that, $527.50. So right now, I still have plenty of room for that to go higher and still make money on the call and the shares. So in good shape. I should make that money after hours. We'll see if it factors in going into tomorrow's session. Overall, good session. I did get stopped out of this position briefly, and then I put it back on once we got the break back above my level. So got a good execution there, 519.61, just as it broke back above my 519.49 level. I was trading off that level, good execution, took my shares off, put it back on as the level held. So I was proud of that trade. Overall, good trading on the day. Didn't really do anything with the IWM, just rolled it out here to 227. I think I did roll it up 1 or 2 strikes. That was good as well. Max profit now on that position, 229.86. Right now we are about $1 below that. It is falling just a smidgen after hours. Gonna have to be patient on that because it is out to the Monday session. Overall, bit of a weak trading month. Happy to make money, just about over with the month. Definitely could have traded better. I was up much higher earlier in the month, gave a lot of that back with some poor trading, but I seem to have gotten my feet back under me here, and hopefully we can have a strong February. And like I said, overall, short-term bullish, watching for those risk factors as we head into the weekend. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of Apple earnings or any of the price action here today. Let me know if there's any stocks you want me to talk about. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.